Shalom, everybody. I'm just a few minutes early today because I was having some difficulty getting on. I think we've worked out the bugs, but it is just a few minutes before 7. I'm Rabbi Rosenfarb from Beth Messiah Synagogue, and we are studying the book of Acts through Jewish eyes. And wanted to invite you to Beth Messiah on Saturday at 10:30 at Crossroads Church there in Norfolk on Surrey Crescent, and we'll be there at 10:30 for our services. Afterwards, we have oneg, a time of refreshment. We'd like to invite you to come have lunch with us, and then we have some afternoon festivities as well. So, would be just glad to have you. We're here in Acts chapter 26, and we're almost at the end. Haven't gotten that much longer to go here. Let's go ahead and begin. Here he is before Agrippa, I believe, and he's beginning in verse 2 of 26. I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa, I am going to make my defense today against all the accusations of the Judeans, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and controversies of the uh, Jewish people. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently. He gives in his salutation his compliments, and indeed, Agrippa was very familiar with Jewish customs and so forth, and would make a good listener for Paul's defense. Verse 4 and following: My manner of life from my youth, spent from the beginning among my own nation and in Jerusalem, is known by all the Judeans. They have known for a long time, if they are willing to testify, that according to the strictness of the party of our religion, I have, this is past tense, I have lived as a Pharisee. And now I am standing on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain as they earnestly worship night and day. And so he's saying, look, we worship night and day in our prayers. We have our hope for the messianic person to come, for the redemption of Israel to come, and so forth and so on, for the prophets to have their prophecies fulfilled. Okay. And so notice he also says, to which are 12 tribes. He must have known that the 12 tribes were still in Israel, as many have suggested that 10 tribes were whisked off and they went here and there. But clearly he believes that the 12 tribes at least are intact in some manner. If not in the land of Israel, they are out there, and something is known of them. All right. And for this hope I am accused by the Judeans, O king. Why is it thought incredible by any of you, and by the way, this is in the plural, that God raises the dead? This is foundational to the Pharisaic thought. Their hope is that their life, their godly life, would lead eventually to the resurrection of the dead. Who, by the way, it comes through Elijah in that theology, not the Messiah. Um, so he lives as an exemplary person. He goes on to continue, verse 9. I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things in opposing the name of Yeshua of Nazareth. And I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison after receiving authority from the chief priests, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. I was there, just agreeing. And I punished them often in all the synagogues and tried to make them blaspheme, and in raging fury against them, I persecuted them even to foreign cities. I was a zealot. I thought they were wrong. I gave my approval to persecuting them, and I chased them to other cities as well. Verse 12. In this connection, I journeyed to Damascus with the authority and the commission of the chief priest. So I wasn't looking for something else. I wasn't looking for anything but to fulfill my commission from the chief priests. I saw in the waif a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, and shone round about me those who journeyed with me. And when we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. That is to say, the goads are the that which moves the animal forward, right? And he's so while he's trying to stamp out the new way, he gets this visitation. He says to Agrippa, and a voice from heaven in the Hebrew dialect, which would probably be Aramaic. Anyway, he's basically saying that an opposition to a deity. We read this that why are you opposing a deity? This uh, idea of goads is well known in Greek writings. Prometheus Bound, for example, Agamemnon, on and on and on. That is an expression for opposition to a deity. And so that's what he hears, and he recognizes what, in fact, it means. And I said, verse 15, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Yeshua, whom you are persecuting, but rise and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and a witness to the things which you have seen me, and to those in which to which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes. This is Isaiah 61, of course, so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, and that they might receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me, as according to, of course, the scriptures. There's no mention of blindness. It's a shorter story. There's no mention of the subsequent hearing. He is basically cutting to the chase, if you will. He's emphasizing the lordship of the Messiah, and he's not emphasizing any of the details of time or human aid. He's just cutting to the chase here. From Ezekiel 2, Jeremiah 1, Isaiah 42, on and on and on. He is quoting really in a paraphrase from these portions. You must go everywhere I send you, Ezekiel 2, and to say whatever I command you, do not be afraid of them, for I will rescue you. That's Jeremiah 1. I'm sending you to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me, Ezekiel 2, and Isaiah 42, 6 and 7. I'll make you a light for the Gentiles, to open the eyes that are blind, to free the captives from prison, on and on and on. So basically, Paul is an emissary to fulfill those promises of God to the Jewish people and to the nations as well. So King Agrippa, verse 19, I did not obey the vision from heaven. On the contrary, I announced first at Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and throughout, this is Damascus, is Damascus, and throughout Judah, and also to the nations, that they should turn from their sins to God and do deeds consistent with that repentance. And it was because of these things that the Judeans seized me in the temple and tried to, in fact, kill me. All right. So he's making it simple. They are accusing me without a cause. I am simply one who believes that which the Jewish prophets have proclaimed, that I'm to help God fulfill, by being part of the kingdom of God, help God fulfill, among others, this desire in God's heart to see not only Jewish people, but the Gentile nations also come to faith, to be in the same kingdom. And then verse 22, to this day I have had the help that comes from God, and so I stand here testifying to both small and great, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would come to pass, and that Messiah must suffer, and that by being the first to raise from the dead, he would proclaim light to both our people and to the Gentiles. These are the tenets. These are the foundations of the early faith. They should be our foundations as well in terms of reconciliation to God. Verse 24, and as he was saying these things in his defense, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, you are out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you out of your mind. This is just not sensible to a Roman who is steeped in Roman thought, Roman culture, resurrection of the dead. All of that is foreign to the Roman psyche, and he thinks he is nuts. This is not a practical way to live. It's not a practical way of thinking. But Paul retorts, verse 25. But Paul said, "I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I am speaking true and rational words. For the king knows about these things, to whom I am speaking boldly. For I am persuaded that none of these things has escaped his notice." And he circumvents Festus and said, I'm telling this before the king. It's not you anymore, it's the king. And he understands these things. He's well acquainted with these kinds of things. So I am persuaded that none of these things has escaped his notice. And this has not been done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe. That's quite something. And certainly the king knew of these things. It was not done in a corner. It was not done in private. It was done in public. And Agrippa said to Paul, and this has been translated variously, but I'm going to give a translation that I think is probably the best one. It can be translated, in a short time, would you persuade me to be a Christian? The other, I think this is the NIV. No, that's the ESV, pardon me. Then Agrippa said to Paul, almost you persuade me to be a Christian. That's the KJV. But I think I think here it is. You think in this short polemic that you're going to persuade me. And Paul's direct question to Agrippa was an embarrassment to him. You believe the prophets, right? And so he's retorting, well, you've just been speaking for a short time, and now I have to believe everything that you're saying, right? So with such few words, with such a brief argument. So I would suggest that that's the best translation instead of almost you persuade, right? Paul said, whether short or long, I would to God that not only you, but all those that hear me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. Of course, I wouldn't want you to be in prison, but I would want you to be a believer. I would want you to know the fantastic reality that I know. Whether it's a short time, long time, whether it's a long argument, short argument, my desire is for your good, for you to know the satisfaction, really, the glory that I know, the fulfillment of the scriptures, which both of us believe coming to pass and being fulfilled in our day. Verse 30. And then the king arose, and the governor and Bernice and those who were sitting with him. And when they had withdrawn, they said to one another, this man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment. And Agrippa said to Festus, this man could have been set free if he hadn't appealed to Caesar. That it was clear Paul had done nothing to be imprisoned. He should be let go, but they have to fulfill his request as he appealed to Caesar. They're going to. Carl. Okay. Hello. Yeah, I'm online now. That's okay. Okay. Bye-bye. Have to pick up for my wife. She forgot that I was online. Okay. All right. All right. So clearly, Paul is going to get his wish. And we would say, oh, gosh, if he only hadn't appealed to Caesar. But that was his intention. He wanted to go to Rome. He wanted to do two things there. One, he wanted to spread the message to the people of Rome. And second of all, he wanted to attain the monies. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Necessary. I think that was part of your homework, as a matter of fact. Did Paul, in fact, go to Spain? Did he complete his Western campaign? We'll talk about that when we get to it. And so he writes Romans in anticipation. If you read it carefully, what he's saying is when you rebel against God, you're not doing yourself any good. And he cites history, and he cites practical examples. The potter and the pot. The clay pot doesn't tell the potter how to make things. So if God's sending me to the Western campaign, who are you to say no? Who are you to say no? We have better people, or who is this guy? He's in trouble with Rome. If we help him, maybe it'll be a bad reflection on us. On and on and on. So Romans is, in my view, more of a deputation letter than what theologically often is touted as the letter of grace. The giving it a theme. It certainly has that in it, but it clearly is the letter of sovereignty, that God's desires are his desires, and his plan is his plan. And we need to give up our way of doing things and say, God, I want my desire to be your desire. And if that's Paul going to the Western campaign, then that's what we've got to support. All right. So it's already, the course is set. It's not just an issue of law, but politics are also involved here. Clearly, there's a political struggle. The Jewish leadership, the Roman leadership, who's going to be pushed by whom. If Rome gets wind of all of this, we've got to make sure that politically we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And so we'll let Rome handle this. We'll let Rome be the final arbiter. And that brings us into chapter 27, verse 1 here. Okay. And when it was decided that we should sail for Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of the Augustan cohort named Julius. Now, this account, maybe you remember way back that I talked about the we portions, not we as in Scottish we or Irish we, small, but Luke has 4 we portions. And these occur in chapter 27, chapter 16, chapter 20, chapter 21, where it's clear that Luke is with him. And he uses we when he refers to, in fact, what is happening. Julius the centurion was supposed to take Paul to Rome, and he was a member of what was called the Imperial Regiment, the Augustan cohort. And this was a group, a very special group. They had police duties. They performed escort services. They were relied upon heavily and trusted. They traveled literally throughout the whole empire. All right. So clearly, this is an important guy, and he turns out to be a very big plus for Paul and his people. And embarking in a ship of Adramyttium, which was about to sail for the ports along the coast of Asia, we put to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. It's not stated, specifically, but probably they embarked from Caesarea. That would be a normal thing. And then they headed northwards toward the coast of Asia Minor. And here's the we again. Verse 3, the next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him leave to go to his friends, and he cared for. So at Sidon, this is the ancient Phoenician port, of course, Tyre and Sidon, and it's about 70 miles north of Caesarea. And so Paul's permitted to go to the believers in the city, and he has favor, clearly. This would favor, of course, would require that a soldier be with Paul at all times. One, to protect Paul, but also to make sure that there's no possibility of escape. And verse 4, and putting out to sea, from there we sailed under the lee of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. And when we had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra and Lycia. So from Sidon, they've got a pretty tough journey against the local breezes, against the wind. And there, the centurion, verse 6, found a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy, and put us on board. Myra is about 2.5 miles inland, and so he's here. It was the most important city in Lycia. Beautiful public buildings, large theater, many evidences of wealth and prosperity. This is all written in ancient Roman text, Greco-Roman text. And this was especially an important port for the large grain ships, and we will have something to say about that, I think, in just a little bit. Um, yeah, Hatshepsut, who was the woman pharaoh at one time in Egyptian history, was an incredible pharaoh, really, just an absolutely brilliant pharaoh. And one of the things that she was brilliant at was commerce on the sea, and she had large ships built for grain, especially. And this is all documented in pictures and reliefs. There's lots and lots and lots of them. If you Google her and Google her wisdom in commerce, you'll find page after page after page of pictures of the ships and the grain and trade routes and things like that. So that basically that's what they're riding on, a large grain ship. Large was better because of the dangerous winds and the currents and waves. So the centurion was smart in that regard. Verse 7, we sailed slowly for a number of days, of course, you're against the wind, and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus, and the wind did not allow us to go farther. We sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmone, coasting along it with difficulty. We came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. So they're moving slowly, very slowly, in fact. And in verse 9, since much time had passed and the voyage was now dangerous, because even the fast that he wanted to observe, that was over. Paul advised them, saying, "Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of cargo and the ship, but also of lives." And this was after November, after about the first week or so, a week or two of November. The sea was considered historically not navigable. And so people, they stopped traveling that course. Yom Kippur was passed, the fast was finished. So here we are, 10th of Tishri, and that's already gone. So Paul's warning them that disaster would befall them if they go any further. But the centurion, in verse 11, paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. And because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there, on the chance that somehow they would reach Phoenix, a harbor in Crete facing both southward and northward, and spend the winter there. So, it's kind of an adventure if you read carefully. Pardon me. It's quite an adventure. One could make quite a movie out of this, a miniseries or something like it. But it's a lot of intrigue here. So the pilot, they prefer not to winter in the small bay. They want to move on to something bigger, and hopefully they would survive until they can get to a place where they can spend the winter. Verse 13. Now, when the south wind blew gently, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, they weighed anchor and sailed along Crete, close to the shore. But soon a tempestuous wind, called the northeaster, struck down the land. And when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. So the decision to winter at the larger place, the more secure place, was made. They rounded the Cape and they run into this east wind. It's terrible east wind. Verse 16, you can see the drama is racing now, right? Okay. Running under the lee of a small island called Cauda, we managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. After hoisting it up, they used supports to undergird the ship. Then, fearing that they would run aground on the Syrtis, they lowered the gear, and thus they were driven along. So they're driven some 23 miles along to a small island. Cauda was a very small island, and the ship managed to gain the lee of the island. So the sailors pulled in the dinghy, was full of water. They reinforced the ship with ropes to keep it from breaking up. You can just see this on the big screen, and just imagine how that particular thing would come about. They passed ropes under the ship and to secure everything above the deck. They basically tied everything down, right? And so, verse 18, since we were violently storm tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo, just as Paul predicted. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands to make the ship lighter. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of us being saved was at last abandoned. So dark, stormy nights, stormy days, couldn't get their bearings by the sun or the stars. The hope for being saved was finished. Verse 21. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, Men, you should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. Okay, so he was right before. Will they listen to him now? For this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I belong and of whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul, to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on some island. It's like Abraham had to have known that he would not die until he bore a son. Or many great men and women knew they had received a prophecy for the future, and they could be guaranteed that they would live to see it. Um, I remember many stories of people who have received prophecies for the future, who thought, for example, that they were going to die of a disease they had, and they received a prophecy: you are going to be preaching before X, Y, and Z, and the Lord is going to move crowds for you, and so forth and so on. So they believed that they would be alive and that they would not die of the disease, and it happened that way many, many, many times. If you receive a word from God, you can be sure it's going to come to pass, right? And whatever the interim is not going to be in jeopardy, because you'll have to get to where God has said you're going to be. All right. So they began to lighten the ship, and they needed to run aground on some island. That's one reason to lighten the ship is to lift it up so you can move it along. So Paul had to have some doubts because he includes himself in what in everything that's going on. We thought we all right. So anyhow, Paul says we've got to run aground. When the 14th night, verse 27, had come, as we were being driven across the Adriatic Sea, about midnight, the sailors suspected that they were nearing land. Probably they were taking readings and realized it was getting more shallow. All right, so they took a sounding and found 20 fathoms. A little farther on, they took a sounding again and found 15 fathoms. And fearing that we might run upon the rocks, they let down 4 anchors from stern and prayed for day to come. 4 anchors, that means that was a big ship, like I said before, a big, gigantic grain ship here. So the 14th night, they're in the sea. It's basically scary. It's an extremely scary situation. Verse 30. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship and lowered the ship's boat into the sea under pretense of laying out anchors from the bow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. So, contrary to the best tradition of the sea, these sailors wanted to save themselves. But Paul said, "Look, in saving yourselves, you're going to die. Okay, yeah, stay in the boat." And so they listened to them, listened to Paul, and they cut the ropes. And all right, so he's warning them. Verse 33, as day was about to dawn, Paul urged them to take some food, saying, "Today is the 14th day that you have continued in suspense without food, having taken nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take some food, for it will give you strength. For not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you. I've got to get to Rome." Right? And if you're with me, you'll be spared. Okay. When he had said these things, he took bread and giving thanks to God. Can you imagine? These many of these are not Jews. They're not Jewish, and they're hearing him pray and give thanks to God in the presence of all. He broke it and began to eat, and they were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. We were all 276 persons in the ship. That's a big ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. So they filled up big time. And a ship like this could actually take probably 600 people if it was necessary, but there's only about half of that. Verse 39. And when it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they noted with a beach on which they planned, if possible, to run the ship ashore. So they cast off the anchors and left them in the sea, and at the same time loosening the ropes that tied the rudders. Then, hoisting the foresail to the wind, they made for the beach. But striking a reef, they ran the vessel aground. The bow struck and remained immovable, and the stern was being broken up by the surf. You remember, he said life would not be lost, except the ship would, in fact, be lost. All right? The soldiers' plan were to kill the prisoners, lest any should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul, kept them from carrying out the plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and make for the land, and the rest on planks or pieces of the ship. And so it was that all were brought safely to the land. Paul's prophecy from the Lord was correct. Some swam and some surfed. Now we're in 28, our last chapter here. Okay. After we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. We know Malta. The ship was wrecked. Malta's about 18 miles long, 8 miles wide. It's not a big island. It had been colonized by the Phoenicians in 1000 BCE, and it was captured by Rome in 218. The Punic Wars, were Roman and the Greek state, I think, was Sparta. That's the Punic Wars. So basically, the people of Malta had a lot of autonomy. They had a measure of local authority there. There was a governor on the island, and but anyway, they settled there. There was a number of army veterans there and lots of families. It was known for its prosperity, its beautiful architecture, and the native population probably spoke Phoenician, Greek, Latin, because it was a commercial city. All right. The native people showed us unusual kindness, verse 2, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all because it had begun to rain and was cold. So the natives, the barbarian, barbaroi, were hardly heathens. Were not heathen. They were hardly, uh, what should I say, barbarians such as we would know it, right? Uh, they were called barbarians because the Romans, when they first encountered these people, their language was strange, and to many who wrote down the sounds, how the way they were speaking sounded like bar, 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 bar. So they were the barbarians, right? Uh, but there was a sophistication. They welcomed us. And in verse 3, when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hands. That wasn't good. Oh my, I thought, God, that you told me I was going to live. Well, I guess I'm going to believe that, right? When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said no to one another, no doubt, this man is a murderer, for he has escaped from the sea. Justice has not allowed him to live. The goddess Dike was the one who was in charge of justice, and basically that's what they believed, is Dike was going to exact justice on this malefactor, right? So had he died, they might have written an epitaph. Here's one who lies a murderer, but Dike has heaped judgment upon him. But that's not what happened. Notice here in verse 5, he, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm, just as Yeshua said would happen, right? They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead, but when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their mind and said he was a god. Obviously, he's not being killed. Maybe it was a god. Maybe he was a favorite of the gods, right? And you can also translate it that way. Now, in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island, named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. So he spends 3 months on Malta. Luke only gives us a few incidents. 3 months is a long time, right? But he only gives a couple of things that happens there. As it happened, verse 8, that the father of Publius lay sick with a fever. How about that? Isn't that remarkable? It's an opportunity, isn't it, for a miracle? And Paul visited him, lay sick with fever and dysentery. And Paul visited him and prayed and put his hands on him and healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and they were cured. Oh my goodness. This potential disasters turned in to this incredible miracle, right? Malta fever was well known back then, and that probably is what he had in modern times, well, relatively 17th century. We recognize that this fever, this comes from a microorganism that comes from Maltese goats. And so in the 19th century, a vaccine was developed. But it was a terrible thing. but he saw the people healed, and the people saw that they were being healed. Verse 10, this is in many ways a proof to Yeshua being alive, right? Yeshua is alive and potent in the earth. We're healing in the name of Yeshua, in a special name. By his stripes you are healed, right? They also honored us greatly, verse 10. And when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. So really, all that food and whatnot that was lost, all that was gathered back. So after 3 months, the centurion Julius arranges for another ship, right? Verse 11, after 3 months, we set sail in a ship that had wintered in the island, a ship of Alexandria, with the twin gods as the figurehead. The sons of Zeus, that was their distinction, right? The painted carving of the two sons of Zeus, Castor and Pollux, right? And transformed by Zeus into twin gods. By the way, the constellation Gemini was named after them. All right. Putting in at Syracuse, we stayed there for 3 days. Waiting for better wind conditions, probably. And from there, verse 13, we made a circuit and arrived at Rhegium. And after one day, a south wind sprang up. And on the second day, we came to Puteoli. From Syracuse, they set sail, they dock, they wait for more favorable breezes, and they're able to make 180 miles advance in their journey in only 2 days. That's quite incredible. The winds must have been incredibly powerful. There we found brothers, verse 14, and were invited to stay with them for 7 days. And so we came to Rome. Now, it doesn't mean they were at Rome. They weren't presently at Rome. It's a way of saying this is the manner in which we came to Rome, i.e., we eventually came to Rome, but this is the manner. This is how we came to Rome. We had favorable winds. We moved rapidly. We found brothers. They took care of us. On and on and on. They stayed here for a week, and then we're pressing on in the story. Verse 15, and the brothers there, when they heard about us, came as far as the Forum of Appius and the three taverns to meet us. On seeing them, Paul thanked God and took courage. And so here's all this fellowship taking place. The three taverns, these are halting places. It's about 33 miles from Rome. These are well-known places, physical markers that they are closing in on Rome. And when we came to Rome, verse 16, get this, Paul was allowed to stay by himself with a soldier who guarded him. So he has private quarters, a soldier's guarding him at all time, probably for his safety, as well as making sure he doesn't escape. And it's kind of Paul is entering Roman triumph, kind of like a victorious general. And here we are, by the way, in Colossians chapter 4 and in Philemon 23, we see that he was joined by John Mark, Epaphras, Demas, Justice, and so forth. All right. So verse 17, after 3 days, he called together the local leaders of the Judeans, and when they had gathered, he said to them, brothers, though I had done nothing, he probably wanted to be proactive before anything could be rumored. He wanted to set things straight as to why he was there, how he got there, so forth and so on, that there be no mistake and no rumors. So he got together with the local leaders, and when they had gathered, he said to them, brothers, though I have done nothing against our people and the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans. When they examined me, they wished to set me at liberty because there was no reason for the death penalty in my case. But because the Judeans objected, I was compelled to appeal appeal to Caesar. Though I had no charge to bring against my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have asked to see you and speak with you, since it is because of the hope of Israel that I am wearing this chain. Okay, so handcuffs, all right, and uh, for the hope of Israel, he's got this formal salutation, brothers, men and brothers, right? This is normal for Paul, and they said to him. Verse 21. We have received no letters from Judea about you, and none of the brothers coming here has reported or spoken any evil about you. But we desire to hear from you what your views are. For with regard to this sect, by the way, in those days, the word heresy was equivalent to the word sect. It only became negative at a later point. It was a group maybe that departed from another group, so to be in heresy was to believe something else, and they weren't separated from one another necessarily. So think of the heretics as a sect. Later we know it had different connotation, but we desire to hear from you what your views are. For with regard to this sect, we know that everywhere it is spoken against. We've heard that, but we'd like to hear from you. Apparently, they were glad that he, in fact, had called them together. Verse 23. And when they had appointed a day for him, they came to him at his lodging in greater numbers. From morning till evening, he expounded to them, testifying to the kingdom of God and trying to convince them about Yeshua, both from the law of Moses and the prophets. And some were convinced by what he said, and others disbelieved. This is the normal thing. So Paul, in that sense, was very successful. Some seed fell on good ground and grew up and produced good fruit. And disagreeing among themselves, verse 25, they departed after Paul had made one statement. The Holy Spirit was right in saying to your fathers through Isaiah the prophet, go to this people and say, you will indeed hear, but never understand. You will indeed see, but never perceive. For the people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. Therefore, let it be known to you that this salvation has been sent to the Gentiles. They will listen. It's not that Paul's going to stop reaching out to the Jewish people. Of course not. That was his custom. But he wanted to show them that God is reaching out to the Gentiles who, in fact, would believe in large numbers. And the people who should believe, many were steeped into their way of thinking, as many of us are, steeped in our tradition, steeped in a mode of, hey, shalom, everybody. Rabbi Derek is saying shalom from Brooklyn. He's busy there with his yeshiva buddies, doing yeshiva work. Hi, Darian. Okay, we've got some lookers on. That's great. Okay, so he's telling them, look, this has happened as the prophet said it would happen. But I'm sure he was very happy that some, in fact, did believe. And he uses the Tanakh to tell them everything's coming to pass that was predicted. He lived, verse 30, there 2 whole years at his own expense and welcomed all who came. Now, I'm going to go forward, and then I want to talk a little bit about maybe what happened afterwards. Verse 31, proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Yeshua the Messiah with all boldness and without hindrance. Now, we have pieces of the picture, right? In Philippians 1 and Philemon 22, Rabbi Saul is expecting to be released. He couldn't be certain, but he was expecting to be released. In Romans 15, he says, I expect to go to Spain. That's my desire. 2 Timothy 4, he speaks of an approaching second trial and he's resigned to being killed if that was what was going to do. That's it. He's rearrested about 67 and beheaded in Rome by Nero. So, did Paul journey to Spain? Romans 15:24-28. I hope to see you when passing through, and to leave you and to have you assist me on my journey to Spain after I have enjoyed your company for a while. Acts ends with Paul under house arrest, but does not describe the journey to Spain. However, early church father Clement of Rome, 96 CE, and First Clement 5:5-7 says, Paul preached the gospel to the limits of the West, right, which was interpreted Spain. And others, Chrysostom, Jerome, believed Paul went to Spain. Scholars are divided on this, but I suspect he did. I believe that the early church fathers should be taken seriously on this regard. And I might add this: there was a Jewish believer named Hegesippus who lived about approximately 140, 144 CE, and he wrote a I think it was 4 or 5 volume set of the history of the body of the Messiah. Now, can you imagine the history from the days of Yeshua to 144? He filled 4 volumes. Somehow they disappeared, and all we're left with is Eusebius's work, Ecclesiastical History. It's only about that thick, well, maybe that thick in some editions, and much of it is taken from Hegesippus's work. Now, we can speculate a little bit, maybe if we see Eusebius as Constantine's historian, maybe he leaves out a lot of the history of the Jewish believers and the significance of them and whatnot, and Paul's trip to Spain and so forth and so on. But it's not unlikely that one day, God willing, the volumes will be discovered. I think we're going to see the first and second century, the early second century, quite differently, with emphasis on things that maybe Eusebius didn't emphasize so much. So, thus completes the work of the Book of Acts, and we're looking forward to new horizons there, new studies. But we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll probably be back in September, but we're going to take a break for the rest of August on Wednesday nights. So. Keep up with us on Saturdays. Keep up with us on the web, and we'll see you back here. Everything will be announced in September. Okay. So shalom aleichem, peace be with you, and we'll see you shortly.